Dare to step into the shadows with me as each eerie episode unveils a chilling saga that defies the light of day. Face your fears and embrace the unknown. And remember, in this realm of terror, the true horror is only just beginning. Welcome to Mook's Horror Story Central, where nightmares come alive. The Atlantic Horror, a Leviathan killer story. My name is Roy Shaw, and the events that occurred in the Atlantic Ocean in 2016 still haunt me in every waking moment. A secretive and extremely deadly operation of which I cannot name for my own sanity. For sure I would fucking die if my superiors ever found out I had uttered a word of this into the outside world, full of naive civilians who failed to understand, and the sheer amount of unknown and eldritch horrors and monsters which lie in the ocean undisturbed. An unknown, unmarked Nazi submarine was discovered at the bottom of the ocean, sunk but somehow in peak condition, which led me to think supernatural elements were at play. I was unwillingly picked to join a secret naval task force called the Leviathan Killers, to lead an expedition to discover and investigate the Nazi super submarine that was way ahead of its time, possibly the peak of all naval engineering in the World War II era. I found myself in a poorly lit submarine of America's most recent naval technology, descending into the dark abyss of the Atlantic as we sought to discover what lay in the shunning Nazi submarine. The endless pitch black that encased our steel vessel was only viewable through a glass porthole as I questioned events that had led me to sink into the Atlantic Ocean on a death mission I surely could not recover from. The submarine began rapidly climbing down into an abyssal maw in the ocean floor, a black pit that branched off into an utterly massive ocean cave under the ocean floor. Our shelter from the unfathomable, cold and endless black reached the floor of the darkness encompassing us as the Nazi submarine came into view. When they said the submarine was beyond its time, it was a fucking understatement. It was of a technology I couldn't hope to fathom. Extremely advanced with designs and engineering that seemed almost alien. It was well beyond anything that Americans had crafted in the war efforts, and even today, a technology of which I failed to see anything surpass as I live haunted by what we found inside the accursed steel hell. Derived from our command, an airtight latch was connected to the Nazi super submarine. As we boarded with our rifles and searched the dark submarine, I came upon an ancient and deteriorated audio recorder placed deliberately on a metal table in what appeared to be an archaic yet ultra-modern laboratory. A primal urge immediately beckoned me to leave the submarine. Immediately upon spotting the recorder, yet I was somehow compelled to reach forward and play the recording, which to my utter shock still worked after the amount of time that had gone by. We have awakened it. What we found was not meant for human eyes, not meant for this world. God help us all. The ocean is hell. A single echoing, self-inflicted gunshot wound sounded through the aged recording as it eventually cut off after the space had run out. As I walked outside the room, I began to truly grasp the fact that it was extremely dark and the construction within the submersible was chilling and void of any color. My doubts were quickly extinguished with hard chilling facts as my standard issue steel flashlight beam shined upon a Nazi swastika on the long steel walls of the shunned submarine. It was drawn in a viscous red liquid blood. It appeared to be fresh, although the implications of that were horrible. This submersible had sunk under unknown conditions nearly 100 years ago, and the unspeakable fact alone that this Nazi swastika was drawn in fresh blood was right in front of me illuminated dimly by my flickering flashlight. The red viscous liquid dripped as my haunted eyes were solidly fixated upon the deadly crimson dripping onto the floor, implying that it was recently drawn. In the absolute worst scenario, I reckon it must have been imprinted crudely upon a wall a few minutes ago. God help us. A loud scream came from the other hallways of the submarine, and I was immediately beckoned to investigate. As I ran down the dark hallways and came upon a gruesome and abominable sight of gore. What I saw was nothing compared to the haunted sights of World War II when I was fighting the Nazi fascists. But before me, lit by the flashlight of my men, were four dead bodies so horribly mutilated and deformed that they were beyond the grasp of human recognition. Viscous and dripping black liquid poured out of every visible orifice and facial features of the dead men, and their eyes were no longer in their rightful place, and chunks of blistered and ripped flesh were torn out in abhorred chunks. Clear signs of violence, damage, and vicious attacks were extremely prevalent. Yet upon further investigation by myself, no shots were fired from my men's rifles, and their combat knives had not been drawn. Whatever had committed the atrocious acts to them, they were very fast and gruesome. A crash emanated from the uttermost furthest corners of the submersible, which beckoned me to run forward with my rifle in hand, shouting orders to my men as I searched for the killer. Crazed and strange thoughts were churning through my head, as I was sure that a quick bullet to the head would have been a true act of mercy to those men. And truly, I only had my rifle to give myself a merciful death, should the need arise. So as I turned the corner and my eyes befell on the source of the noise, I saw that there were one of my men horribly mutilated and physically torn to shit beyond human recognition. The only thing that indicated that the pile of vaguely humanoid torn flesh was human was the torn combat uniform and the self-inflicted knife wound, presumably to have a quicker death than whatever happened to him afterward. I was on the verge of absolute insanity. At that precious moment, everything was tearing my mind apart. I decided to try to ditch the mission as I made an effort to make my way out of the depths of the extremely advanced Nazi submarine and escape this abyssal hell. Fuck the mission, fuck this country, this isn't supposed to fucking exist. The screams of my men shattered the deafening silence and emanated through the halls. When they cut off, I knew that the last of my men had met a horrible, dreaded, gruesome fate. I ran and ran and ran and ran, not glancing my haunted eyes upon the corpses of all my dead men as I hastily made my escape. Fear was not only a concept or feeling in that period of time, it was a sensation of which nothing else to this waking, accursed day I can find a replication or sliver of familiarity to. An ungodly sound emanated through the halls of the cold Nazi submarine as the noise of some eldritch abomination of which I could not fathom made pursuit after me as I stumbled through the dark halls with my rifle barely in hand. I glanced once behind me, after a second, and saw a horror of nothing of this earth or beyond can possibly hope to surpass, a horror that weak human eyes were never meant to behold, and all its existence and up into its extinction. This will sound long, but it is the only way I can even hope to describe the creature I saw, if it was even alive or from this earth. I cannot hope to ever give justice to a proper description of the horror. I had only seen a portion of the abomination, though I considered that mercy, as if I had laid eyes on the entirety of the horror, I would have gone mad. Behind me was pure pitch black darkness, rapidly closing in, which hid the thing that was bringing the total absence of light and color. In the split second, I made the hasty decision to look back, and I witnessed a tendril or appendage of utter alien origins connected to some kind of long mass of flesh, something that was so incomprehensible my mind threatened to tear at its own thin threads by merely looking at it. The appendage was nothing of this world or anything else, something that could only belong to the utmost horrors of this universe, and of which God shunned himself. It was of geometry and color which my brain was not familiar with. Despite the thing being right behind me, and in pursuit to bring a new kind of hell upon me, no words can hope to properly convey the utter terror and unfamiliarity of the appendage. How alien it was, its color, texture, non-Euclidean geometry, the way it moved was tearing my mind apart. It was absolutely enormous, yet minuscule at once, stretching out but yet short. The appendage alone was nearly enough to drive me insane, and I could not help but wonder what unholy Leviathan it could have belonged to, and what it could have possibly looked like. As the thing was hidden in darkness, my head foolishly slammed itself on a low-hanging doorframe near the exit which connected to our airtight submarine. My body went unconscious, and I descended into the cold steel floor as I regained mental access to the hell I was in. I absolutely could not bear to lay my eyes upon whatever had mutilated and laid waste to my men, and had haunted, tormented, and scared me permanently with a single fraction of its physical manifestation. I clenched my eyelids shut and waited for a sensation of my flesh being ripped from my bones, and I heard the noises stop and felt whatever eldritch horde had made pursuit manifest above me. I shook with so much fear I hoped and hoped and hoped a heart attack would befall me and take me out of that abyssal hell. I shook and was consumed by primal fear not meant to be known by human minds, and writhed and screamed in utter cosmic pain and agony as I felt the true presence and magnitude of what lay before me. The only way to describe the feeling of the entity's presence without going truly insane is utterly ancient, primal, disgusting, and something that was never meant for humans to be in the presence of. The entity wasn't fifth dimensional, it was something beyond, so horrifying it could not be classified as a god, for it was something else, and something that exceeded any version of the language, communication, or definition of any being in this universe could have ever hoped to have thought of. That was purely what it seemed to me as a human. I would never truly find out. I remember the sensation of nothing but pain, utter pain, and suffering beyond human limits, beyond what my nervous system should have been able to rationally process, as I couldn't even find the sanity to scream or shake as I lost consciousness. The mission I was forced to go on was highly classified and high-end, and had a lasting result of such an operation, and reconnaissance and rescue team was sent to our coordinates to rescue any survivors or remaining intel from the little to no information I was given by my ignorant superiors. Only 2 men out of 30 of the rescue team had returned to the logging surface from any attack from an unknown source, as I was found with dangerous burns, symbols, runes, and carvings scattered all over my body. Once the aftermath of the traumatic experience settled, I could not rid my mind of the dead researchers' words, which were imprinted in my mind, word by word, as they haunt me to this day. As I live out my final strained and haunted days, I cannot even imagine the stories of others who have witnessed similar horrors. What we found was not meant for human eyes, not meant for this world.